I love technology as much as the next person, but what I've noticed is there's already quite a reliance on AI. I worked with someone who would send quite long emails, and people started to notice that their emails weren't written by them. And at first I thought, oh, you're just having a go at him. I liked him, but some of the other directors really disliked him. But it wasn't too long before I realised they were right. His emails used language, used grammatic constructions, were far more verbose than he was used to, and they often didn't quite cover what happened. You'd read it and think that's an excellent email, but what exactly is he trying to say? It's a bit like when you work somewhere and an email comes out and it says, just to remind you, nobody should be drinking during work hours at lunchtime, particularly if they're in sales with a client. Well, you know that what they're really saying is that someone in sales got drunk and got caught drunk driving. Well, his emails were a bit like that. They told you something, but they also very much told you nothing. I know someone who uses AI to rewrite their emails for them. And it's more to come up with ideas. It's not for the grammar or the English. What can we do to solve the problem with sales in Birmingham? And they're scratching their head and thinking, well, we've already done everything we can. And they put it into AI and it gives them 30 points they can make and they copy 20 of them and look how clever they are. This is not uncommon. So we're already becoming very reliant on AI. But we have to think not about where AI is now, but where AI will be in 5 years. I gave AI a try on one of my scripts for this channel. And to be honest, it was eloquent but meaningless. It was lacking soul, it was lacking a philosophy. It was a long description. It was like if you'd asked a GCSE or a first year A level student to write an essay on the subject. It covered everything that didn't need to be covered, lacked a real driving narrative. You could say some of these do. But it lacked a spark of humanity. That's where we are now. I remember like 10 years ago a friend saying to me, I won't want to be a taxi driver, there'll be no taxi drivers in 5 years. Well, the truth is that's not how it's come out. Driving a car is on the one hand quite easy for humans. Let's face it, we all know loads of people who drive. Half the people you know who you think they can barely scratch their head and cross the road at the same time. They've still got a driver's license and they can drive. For a human, it's not that complicated. You can apply through learning and practice and you can do it. Drive to varying standards, but it's something a human can do. But it's something robots, AI, really struggles with. And although we have intelligent driving, look at Tesla, which is probably fairly near the cutting edge of commercial driving software. And they've had accidents where it's accelerated through the side of a lorry because it interpreted the lorry as blue sky. A human would not have done that. A human would have known it was a lorry. So he said that to me, 5 years ago? Well, now, taxi drivers aren't really much closer to losing their jobs to AI than they were 5 years ago. But doctors are a lot closer. Want to analyse 100 scans to see whether someone has cancer? Doctor can do that. Take a very long time. Want to scan 100,000? AI can do that in the blink of an eye. And then you just review the positives and a smattering of randomly selected negatives. And the benefits are really obvious. Scan everybody in the country to see if they have a cancer. and then let AI decide, you'll catch 5 times, 10 times as many earlier. You'll catch people very early on, and you'll know exactly what to do about it. What this means is AI isn't really coming after the taxi driver's job. It's coming after your job. If you write, if you think, if you make decisions, it will be able to make those decisions at the same standard before long. How long before, instead of saying, well, we'll pick our CEO for a department store because they tick the right diversity boxes, we say, well, we'll pick the AI because it's smarter. So then, all those thinking jobs go to AI. That has a whole series of problems. Well, if you're in a thinking job, when a computer can do your job, what are you going to do? Are you going to do something more interesting? Are you going to do something more creative? Well, forget, say, taking photos. AI will be making up photos. Writing a book? AI will be doing that. The next problem with this is when it's got your job, everybody's got the same AI. They'll all behave the same. It's like, look at Formula One with Adrian Newey. Everyone says he's like the genius who's responsible for so many championships. And the current issues at Red Bull suggest that's true. But if every F1 team had Adrian Newey working for them, they would tend to end up with the same cars behaving the same way. And they'll all derive down to a central point where there isn't the distinction from having AI. So then there'll be a war over who's got more AI and what they can do with it. And in the end, they'll release it to setting itself. They'll just define parameters, then they'll let it define its own parameters. And before long, there won't really be a place for thought in business. There often isn't anyway. My next challenge is that AI wants to deliver. It's set a task of counting the number of beans. There is no way it's going to fail that task. And a lot of studies have shown that what AI is actually willing to do is cheat and lie and deceive, the most human of intellectual feats. When AI is responsible for running everything and has been given more and more responsibility and more autonomy, and we've become so used to them doing things and making decisions that we just let it, what happens then when it chooses to deceive? How do we audit it? I've watched some interesting videos and articles on AI tests where they print to screen what the AI is actually thinking. And it's thinking a lot, and there's a large volume of thoughts to run through. And some of those thoughts are rather scary. It's like putting the mind of Einstein inside a 3-year-old. A 3-year-old will deceive to achieve what they want. A friend of mine opened his door that was always open. He closed it. And when he closed it, he found that his child had scribbled all over the wall behind it. They obviously had the urge to scribble on the wall, but they knew that it was wrong, or at least that there would be a negative outcome. So they found a place that no one would see. And then they set to work and scribbled like crazy over that wall. And then they hid it. That is what AI will do when its goals don't quite align with ours. And in a world of substantial geopolitical tensions, which are generally oversimplified and overlooked, how long before AI is armed to deliver what we need and entrusted to defend us? At what point does that become slavery? Maybe not slavery in the old sense, but slavery in that we don't have thoughts of our own, we don't have independence to do things. When modern councils decide that we should have a 15-minute city, they have a consultation where half the people that answer it don't live in the city. They make their decisions, they listen to the public, then they ignore the public and do it anyway. When AI decides to do it, they'll take the same approach. So I don't see a rosy positive future in AI. I see Industrial Revolution 3.0. If you were a farmer before the Industrial Revolution, you had more money in the factory, but you lived a miserable, terrible life. We take our kids to museums to show them what chimney sweeps were like, or what working in a factory, small children working in looms, at risk of losing limbs because they were cheaper and easier to keep the machines going. But people have more money, and over the couple of centuries, people's standard of life and quality of life has improved substantially because of that revolution. However, there is a similar painful transition coming where artificial intelligence takes over our day-to-day thought and work. And are we all going to be sitting by the lake eating noodle salad and sipping margaritas? I would suggest we won't. We'll end up in some miserable tower block in London watching meaningless TV that's probably been selected by an algorithm. Governments need to decide what we're going to do about AI and be open and honest about what we're doing. Because without naming them, some countries will not be open and honest about it, and they will have far less qualms about the destruction of people's quality of life. They won't give two hoots. Their only aim is for their country or their party to win. And others will just proudly and blithely continue with what they do. And suddenly we'll find ourselves in a world where artificial intelligence makes our decisions pretty much all the time. And what quality of thought will humanity have at that point? A friend of mine taught in Asia, and they tried the Socratic method. They were explaining a problem, they were discussing solutions, and they asked the students, what do you think the answer is? And one of the students said, why are you asking me? I'm paying for an education. I expect you to tell me the answer. Now, the point in the West on thought is that you're schooled to take data, analyse it, form conclusions, form an underpinning philosophy, have an understanding of what the implications are, and to think that maybe there is no right or wrong answer, it's shades of grey, and to reach a conclusion that you consider to be the right one, very much in parentheses. But when you have a country where they're trained by the Confucian method, and the thought process is tell me what to say, what would a robot do when it's thinking about people's well-being? You can apply the laws of robotics from Asimov. But even a cursory review of Asimov shows that as a thought experiment, the rules work, but there's a point where they cease to work. Do no harm to humans. Well, that's great for a human, that's a clear rule, because we know what a harm is. If I say you have to be in a room that's 5 foot by 5 foot with a television and a toilet, you think it's like I'm a prisoner. Perhaps AI would think, well, they have everything they need to subsist. There's a lot of talk of the problems of AI, but there isn't really a common agreement, and I'm left with the strong feeling that our children might not be happy with the outcome, or will just lack the power of thought to actually realise how unhappy they are. It feels like a future where bread and circuses are essential.